Hi, hi everybody. Hello and welcome to the episode 5 of the Tag Talk show. I am your host, Bismayy. I work at Tatvik Analytics. It's a Google marketing platform partner based out of India, and I lead the product team. The product name is Tagmate. The sponsor of Tag Talk is basically Tagmate, and we're going to talk about a little about Tagmate during the end of the session today. But yes, for today's spotlight, we have our speaker, Marc. He's an ex-Googler and he's a GA expert and consultant. And today, I want to welcome Marc to our Tag Talk Show, episode 5. Hi, Marc. Thank you for joining in.
Thanks for having me, Bismayy. Very happy to be here.
Great. Uh, Thank you. So, for people who are joining in, I know from an Indian subcontinent or from Mark's country region, it's either too early in the morning or too late in the night. But for other time zones, which are time friendly for this webinar, I promise this will be a cracking of a webinar or an episode because while we were preparing along with Mark, I was able to debunk or educate myself with some of the myths around server-side tagging and very critical aspects of what server-side tagging actually solves for and what it does not hold, right? The session will be about the questions that we have created from the exactly from the Google questions or basically the Google search questions that people are searching for. There are certain questions that we have asked the audience that we had collected prior, and there are certain questions that we had coming in from our customer base, which is Tagmate's customer base, right? Uh, but please don't hold yourself. If you have more questions as during the webinar and you think you need them to be answered, Mark is the person for you. Mark is the expert for you, right? Quick check on what's Tag Talk. Tag Talk is all about marketing analytics. It's about GA. It's about analytics, digital analytics per se. It is about server side, first party data, third party cookies, uh, GTM GTM implementations for your different kinds of your websites, be it WordPress, be it Shopify, and so forth, so on and so forth, right? So we basically hold this Tag Talk every month, one of the episodes every month with an esteemed speaker who is basically a digital evangelist or who is an expert in this particular industry, where we'll talk about all these topics in great variety and great detail so that when you leave home after the webinar, you are also, if not an expert, but you are already on the path to do that, right? So today's topic is about server-side tagging. If some of you would have joined or are a past webinar attendee of Tag Talk, you know that we had talked about server-side tagging in one of our webinars, but today we felt that Mark, who is an expert in this, he would give us detailed deep dive on server-side tagging and why it's the future of Martech. Great. Thank you for kind of resisting your questions until now. But like I said, you can drop in your questions in the chat as we go along. For today's agenda, it will be like a 45-minute session. We'll start with a quick intro on the speakers. There will be a little bit of introduction on the cookies and SST, which is server-side tagging connection. Then we'll have the questions where I'll be firing the questions at Mark, and he will be happy to answer us. There will be a quick Tagmate preview, and then we'll open the session to audience Q&A. Great. The first our speaker is obviously Mark. I think he was working in Google until now, or basically until past month. He had joined Google in 2014, and he has about 13 years of experience in digital analytics, and that's like building up an arsenal of all kinds of analytics setups, analytics deep dive on Google Tag Manager, server side, which has come in recently in the past few years. And his passion for GS stems from the belief that data-driven decisions can improve advertising and enhance user experience, right? So analytics, advertising, and user experience. This is what he has been working with clients, consultants while he was at Google, while he's right now working as a freelance consultant for GAG and server-side GTM setups through his website. His website is markgirod.net/services. My team will be sharing the link in the chat. So anybody who is an agency or a brand who is looking to set up GA4 or server-side GTM or similar, Google Tag Manager implementations, you can definitely reach out to him. His email ID is mark@markgirod.net. Thanks again, Mark, for joining us. Thank you. Bismayy, I am Bismayy. Old name. I have been doing this session for the past 5 months now. So I head the product division, and some of the products we have launched in are Tagmate, Pipestream, Badger. You can reach us out at hello@tagmate.app. I have about 7 to 8 years of experience in developing SaaS-based products in the same domain, marketing analytics. Right. Let's get started on cookies. Everybody would be reading about first-party cookies, third-party cookies. So this is a wonderful infographic around the timeline of third-party cookies that I received or I was checking on Data EQ's website. Thanks to them, they have published a wonderful infographic where it talks about how in 2017 Safari came up with their ITP 1.0, which is Intelligent Tracking Prevention. GDPR came up in 2018. Safari upgraded to 2.0. Firefox came up with ETP, and Apple came up with iOS 14 in 2020. So basically, they wanted to crack down on the misuse of third-party cookies, and Google Chrome basically is also going to have a timeline where they will eliminate the third-party cookies on the browser from the browser, right? So in simple marketing terms, what does it mean for us like a marketer? Personalized ads won't work. So a business guy may be sold a sports shoe instead of a business shoe because third-party cookies, which were basically able to personalize the targeting for them in terms of the ads, that won't work accurately. The user experience is going to be too poor because there is going to be a lot of more bombarding of ads to them across devices, browsers, because identification of the same user will be difficult, and more or less ad measurement gaps is going to widen, right? Why are we concerned about it? So the big impact of third-party cookies is basically why, because there's a study by Google which says that publishers lose an average 52% of ad revenue if third-party cookies go away. That's like more than 50% of revenue loss, right? And 80% of their ad revenue is dependent on third-party targeted ads only for the US advertisers. Like the number is like 10 billion, which is a huge risk. So why are we talking about third-party cookies? I think you guys might have got the hint. You might have thought that, okay, so if cookies are going away, so is server-side tagging the solution? I will park my question to and let Mark answer you from here on.
Bismayy, we can go to the next slide.
Okay. Right. So the next session is about the Q&A deep dive, where I'll be pushing on questions. So the first basic question that we have want to talk about is what's server-side tagging and how it's different from client-side tagging. Mark, please enlighten us.
Yeah, sure. So first, maybe a little reminder on how client-side tagging works. This is the what we've been doing for many years. So first you collect the data client side and you send that data to the vendors, the different platform like Google Analytics, Google Ads, Facebook, and so on. Let's continue. Server-side tagging will introduce your own server in this process. So you will still collect the data client side, and you will send it to your own server. And from that server, you will send it to the different media platform like Google, Facebook, and so on. And next, please. And what I just described, this is how server-side Google Tag Manager is working. There are other ways to do server-side tagging, but this is not the focus of the talk today. So today we're going to talk about this setup. Yeah.
Great. We move on to our next question. So since we understood like what is the difference between client side and server side, why is there a need of server side GTM, Marc? And is it applicable for both analytics and marketing platforms?
Thanks. Yeah, I forgot to say earlier that server-side tagging from Google Tag Manager is not completely new. It's been around for like maybe 2 or 3 years, but this is not something that's been pushed proactively like by Google or for now. So that's why it's a bit under the radar, but it's been there like already. So yeah, to answer your question, that doesn't seem very obvious to why it would be beneficial to introduce a server between your data collection and the Google servers or the Facebook server. It would even mean that we complexify the process. But having that middleman, having something in between the data collection and the media server, that introduce actually some advantage. The first one is improve site performance. So yeah, we've seen improve in terms of page load, just because the way it works in server side will make relying the data collection less on what's happening in client side. So you will download less script basically. And to give you an example, what you can do in server-side GTM is collect the information once, like for instance, if there's a conversion, because this is usually the kind of information that many media tags are interested in. And so you will collect that information once, doing just one push to your server container. And from your own server, then you will dispatch that information to the different media vendors that are interested in. So you see that it's different. It's opposite from sending the information each time to each vendor. Here you do send it once and then you dispatch. That's why there's an improved site performance. Don't expect 50% or like big numbers, but a few percentage. Yes, it's something you can hope. And in that space, this is already really good. Like every percent is great. So yeah, next page, please. So the first one is about control, because having this middleman, having this server in between, it gives you the ability to really control what data you collect and where the data will be sent. It's like kind of a border control. I try to be careful with my comparison, but yeah, you can see it's really you decide. You're in charge. It's or the advertiser is in charge. So it's responsible to what data he wants to share to Google or Facebook or others. For instance, if he doesn't want to share IP addresses, which is like pretty sensitive data at the moment, he had the ability to completely block the IP address. But it's true for other information as well. So that's puts you in charge, in control, which is great. Next slide, please.
Yeah. That's assuring.
Yeah. So, and the third one I'm going to talk about in terms of advantage is, it gives you the ability to improve the data quality in many aspects. Like the first one, you could imagine if you want to collect data, like sensitive data that you don't want to collect client side because you don't want anyone who can use a debug tool to see that data. So what you can do is store that data in another server, and when you collect the user data, you join that data with the data you collect. To give you an example, like imagine a profit or margin of an e-commerce platform. This is something you could do with server side, and that would be completely secure. It won't be visible client side. The other thing is here we mention ad blockers. So first up, just a reminder, you should probably have the consent of users if you override what ad blocker is doing. But if you have the consent of users to collect data about them, client server side could mitigate the impact of ad blocker. Browser restriction. So here we talk about ITP and ETP on Safari and Firefox. So here, if you only do client-side implementation, at least for ITP, your cookie, your expiration cookie of your first-party cookie, the expiration will be 1 day. But if you set that cookie through HTTP server side, that expiration will be 7 days, which is a bit better. It was recently, until recently, was there was no limit when the cookie was set server side, but ITP made an update, and now it's going to be 7 days. I'm not sure if it's live now, but it will be at some point. And here that impact directly the attribution, how we can link a conversion to a source. So you can understand with if you have 1 day of data or 7 days of data, 7 days of data is a bit better situation.
Yep. Right.
Yeah. Next slide, please.
Yeah. So before jumping into the third question, I had a quick question again. Like, is server-side GTM or server-side tagging also applicable for app, or is it only applicable for website pixels or website tags, or is that like also applicable for offline?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's mostly for web. There's a way to collect app data as well, but you can't. You can collect like custom data, but not all the default data. So you can't do like a full implementation using server side on app. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Google was, maybe doing something there at some point.
Comes up in there later.
That would be very logical, but it's in their hands, and we'll see.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
good question.
Great. Thanks for that. So, Mark,
Yeah.
our third question is about GDPR compliance because it's a very sensitive topic. I think I would want you to kind of help us and give us a little more info on if server-side GTM makes us GDPR compliant or not.
Yeah, so that's a great question because I feel there's a lot of confusion in this on this topic, and I won't blame anyone here because this is a really complex topic. This is legislation. GDPR is many pages in legal terms, and it's up to interpretation. It's not clear. You can see there's debate between the the government in Europe and the different and Google and Facebook, and so, and that's great complexity, and complexity is never good for business. So but what I can say is, even if you use server side, that won't make you automatically GDPR compliant. It's just a tool, server side. If you want, you can collect PII email addresses and send it to Google and Facebook. That would probably be against GDPR, and so prove that it's not a tool that will make you GDPR. That said, it could help you to enforce some GDPR rules. For instance, you can, like, to take the IP address example, you could block the IP address directly. Here on that side, Google announced that consent mode was compatible with server side. It's not restrict to server side. Consent mode can work with classic client side implementation, but it does work with server side implementation as well. Maybe a few words on consent mode. So consent mode will be the ability to reflect the user consent on how the different Google tags behave. So it will basically set the cookie or not based on what consent the user gave. And the other part of consent mode, if a user doesn't give his consent to set a cookie, a first-party cookie, we will do Google will do some data modeling to try to guess the data that Google can't observe anymore. So there's some statistic methods to replace the data with model data, and you have access to that only if your brands use consent mode. Yeah.
Right.
Next.
Right. Yeah. So if
Uh,
you'd like to summarize for us. Yeah.
yeah. So that said, don't think don't use server side as a magical bullet that will fix and will make everything compliant. If you operate in a country, you need to follow the legislation of that country, and it could be complex. So you may need to ask to work with a legal expert to be advised. Then second point, because I saw that sometimes if you in that context you ask user consent, please apply the change in your data collection, because sometimes I see that even so the advertiser website asks for user consent, it doesn't impact the data collection. So yeah, if you on the journey to ask consent, make sure that consent is impacting the data collection.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about consent, obviously we are also talking in lieu of the PII data, right? That we want to collect.
Yeah, yeah, definitely PII is a topic here. Um, it will be yeah, it will really depend where in which product you want to send that, and at the minimum it should be hashed with the salt and all of that.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Got it.
maybe
Yeah.
one word on user consent just to clarify. You really that topic is really it really depends on which country you operate. In some countries, it's not mandatory to ask for consent.
Hmm.
Uh, it doesn't mean you can't ask for consent. You know, it could be a choice, it could be a decision from the advertiser. And in other country, is it looks like it's mandatory. So it has to be a decision from the advertiser to decide if he wants to ask consent on users to to set first-party cookies to collect data, anonymous data about them.
Right.
But yeah, but there's still a lot of countries where it's not mandatory. So uh, yeah, it's up to you for now in some countries.
Got it. Got it. So, yeah. So the baseline is sGTM or server-side GTM is not the tool to make you GDPR compliant. Right. Yeah. That's a big myth, I think, that
Yeah,
people should be careful about. Moving on to
it
a
can
fourth
help.
question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Please
No, I'm
finish.
just saying it can help, but it's not going to make you automatically compliant. Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
and no tool will. It's not it's it's not because of GTM. No tool will make you compliant. It's a policy that you need to decide uh, at the top of your company uh, how
Got it.
you treat user data.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Next slide. So
Right.
yeah.
This is an important question because we have been talking about server-side GTM until now. It looks like a fabulous approach or a tool to get started with, considering the advantages that you said. So to set this up on your cloud or set this up for your website, do you think we need cloud developers or technical help?
Yeah. So first, I, I would take my example. I'm not a developer. I'm not a cloud expert, and I did quite a few number of implementation using server-side GTM. There's script that automate the implementation. There's tutorials to do the implementation. It's not if you are able to follow a technical tutorial, you should be able to do it. And this is all. This is for the entire the setup of the server-side container. That said, I would advise you to learn by doing a test, like in a environment a test on either a very low traffic website uh, or staying in the testing environment of GTM. So you can use the production environment if you're in a low traffic website. If you want to push your server-side container in a production environment with a lot of traffic and there you might want to ask someone who a bit more technical or experienced with server-side GTM to make sure that there is no problem, especially because there's a cost behind server-side GTM, and well, you don't want to create a lot of problem with the cost, like a very high cost. So yeah, it might be a good idea to ask for an expert at some point, but please try and do some by yourself to learn server-side GTM, no one will be hurt.
Right, because I think as a marketer myself or a product manager, even client GTM was or web GTM was a bit technical for us. So when server side GTM came up, we thought this is like not our job. Somebody else needs to
Yeah,
do it for us.
I mean, maybe I will draw the line here. If you're very confident with GTM, you should try server-side GTM. If you're not very comfortable with GTM, yeah, it might be right to stick to understand what it can do, but without doing the implementation itself.
Right.
It's still a topic that I think most marketers should know about, but yeah, they don't have to do the implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. Time for a quick poll. Mark, I'll just let my team run a quick poll. Rohit, if you're available, please run the poll for the audience. It'll take about 30-40 seconds to collect your answers. Great. We are just going to close the poll in another 10 seconds or so. Thanks for answering on the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. Rohit, we can close the poll. Thank you. Our last question for today. Obviously, there will be a lot of audience Q&A. We hope. Like I said, everybody, you can start typing in your questions because in a few minutes from now, we'll have the Q&A session for Mark. Mark, my last question to you. When should I get started with server-side GTM and how or what is the process to get going with this?
Thanks. So maybe first, yeah, on the process, if there's one thing I want you to remember is server-side GTM, at least on the data collection side, is similar to client side. So you still need to collect the data client side, and then you send it to your own server, and from the server to the media servers. So all the complexity of collecting data client side still exists. It's not, at least in server-side GTM. So here you can see the process. First is to set up your server container, then to collect your data with client-side. It could be client-side GTM, it could be Google Tag. It doesn't matter. And then you preview and the setup, and you go live. Next slide.
What is the kind of timeline to do this entire process?
So timeline, I would say pretty similar to what the timeline you have for a client-side implementation. It will just maybe add 2 days because of the server-side part.
Right.
Is not going to be the more time-consuming part. The server-side setup is I would be surprised. More than 2 days, I would be surprised.
Okay.
You will spend more time client-side collecting the data than setting up the server container. Yeah.
And when we are talking about server side, is it right now only restricted to Google Cloud Platform, or we can have access, or we can set it up on other cloud platforms as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So no, you're not limited to Google Cloud Platform. Of course, there's integration, so it's easier to use Google Cloud Platform. But if you want to use AWS or Microsoft or any cloud technology that use Docker, this is the piece of technology that will make it possible to use server side outside of GCP. So it's pretty open, pretty agnostic. Maybe a bit more work to make it work, but there is tutorial already on at least for Microsoft and Amazon. So yeah, it's possible. You don't have to use Google Cloud Platform for that.
Right.
There's a little advantage to do it, but you have the choice.
Thanks for that. So, in short, like, would you like to summarize, like, what are the key points while we're implementing?
Yeah. So, well, it's not the summary. It's more like a few points that I want to make sure you're aware. But yeah, it's worth implementing today sGTM as a test. But keep in mind that if you implement GA4 through server side, keep in mind that Google Signal is not compatible yet. That means the ability to create audiences or to have geolocation data and so on, all the features behind Google Signals. So you won't be able to do that. Google will probably fix that at some point, but yeah, we don't know. The other thing is server-side GTM has a cost compared to other technology cost. If when you do a client-side implementation, the technology to collect the data has no cost. You can pay developers or a partner, but that's the technology itself has no cost. In server-side GTM, it has a cost because you use servers. You will you need to rent those servers either on GCP or Amazon or Microsoft, but that costs money. It's usually based on how much data you collect, and so yeah, it's hard to give an estimation, but usually most clients should be around $100 US dollars per month. There's a cost calculator if you use Cloud Run, which is one of the technology server for GCP. So to give you a better idea. A point on Cloud Run. So when server-side GTM launched, he used App Engine, and he still use App Engine as the recommended solution. But when he launched, Cloud Run was in beta, and Cloud Run is considered a more modern server technology. It's a serverless technology, and it will probably be the recommended technology in the future from Google. It's not the case at the moment. They launch like a new course on server-side tagging, and it seems it's still App Engine that is used for the course. But keep in mind that Cloud Run is probably the technology that will be used in the future. So, and Cloud Run is maybe not as well integrated yet today with server-side GTM. So you can see there's a lot of moving pieces, and because the technology is still evolving. That said, I think it's worth keep in mind and do some tests, because it's probably server-side will probably play a key role in the future for digital marketing. And yeah, that's it, Bismayy.
Yeah, great. And yes, like for the audience, there is a learning pathway by Google. So I have started doing the course. I think everybody who is getting started on server-side GTM, so they should go through that entire fundamentals course. It's filled with videos and resources to keep you aligned with the topic. Great. Time for audience Q&A. Mark, I've started collecting the questions. So the first question I wanted to ask was from Dhruv. He is asking, can I install server-side GTM setup on my shared hosting?
So I would say yes, if you can use Docker. So this is really the piece of technology that is relevant here. Whatever system, cloud or on-premise, if they use Docker, you should be able to set a server-side GTM there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Dhruv, so you can definitely go ahead and install. If there's a question from Yamil, it's a long question. I'll read it through. If I am not compliant, so Yamil asks, if I am not compliant, can others easily identify this on their end, or is it possible to get away with it without others noticing? Asking for educational purpose only. Okay, right. Mark, did you get the question?
Yeah. So I guess here you mean GDPR compliant. So I think you have to be careful here. There's many aspects of what it means to be GDPR compliant. And yeah, for the most obvious one, there's ways when you debug an implementation, you could see if they collect PII data, for instance. The complexity would be you notice that client side they collect PII data, but maybe with their server-side implementation, they redact those PII data and they don't send that PII data to the Google and Facebook servers. So that complexity to check if a company is compliant on that aspect of GDPR. There's probably other aspects that they're not easily identified and other ones that are easily identified. So it depends. It really depends.
Right. But I think we would all suggest that we should be compliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the future. Right. The next question is from Brian. He asks, is zero party data tracking handled well with server side tagging? Oh, that's something which is new for me as well. So yeah.
So if geodata,
Zero party data tracking. Yeah. So he's asking, is zero party data tracking handled well with server side tagging? So I had heard about first party and second party and third party.
Yeah, sorry. So geodata, like geolocalization data, right?
Right.
Data.
I think so. I am not sure about it.
Yeah. So at the moment, no, because you need Google Signals for that, and Google Signals doesn't work for GA4. It works if you implement UA. If you implement UA with server side, Google Signals works, and you will have geodata. For GA4, it's not the case at the moment. I'd be surprised if Google doesn't fix that at some point, because it's a huge
right. So does that mean we won't be able to create audiences in GA4 for Google Ads? Because
For now, this is correct. But yeah, I'm confident that Google will fix that.
got it, got it. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. There's one more question that has come in. They are asking, basically the question is about if server side tagging applicable for Facebook and Snapchat and other ad platforms.
So yeah, there's yeah, maybe I should have highlight that a bit more. It's not only for Google product or Google tags. Facebook pretty early actually developed their own tag, Facebook conversion tag for server side. So you can use server side to implement the Facebook conversion tag. And there's other vendors as well. Not all vendors have a server side version of their tag. So I'm guessing today it would be a mix of both. We're not in a situation where we can do everything server side, but fingers crossed it will be better in a few months. It's up to each vendor to update their tag to make it work in a server side context. But yeah, so it's not reserved to Google product. Anyone can, just like with GTM, every vendor can be implemented at some point.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. I think we are at the end of this session. There are no further questions in the chat at least for now. Great. If the audience has more questions, please drop by on the chat or email us, and we'll follow up with Mark to get it answered. So, Mark, thank you again for being a part of, or basically speaking and hosting, because you have been answering almost all the questions left, right, and center, and debunking a lot of myths and the technicalities behind it. So, any closing thoughts before we end the session?
Thanks, Bismayy. That was I hope people learn a few things today. That was very interesting on my side as well. Maybe closing remark is we're in an industry that's with a lot of changes that happened and will happen in the coming months, and user privacy it become more and more important. So make sure you have a thoughtful strategy about user privacy, and this is an opportunity to make our business with the consent of users, and it's not going to be easy at first, but I think this is the only way to continue doing digital marketing. Yeah, so think about how you collect data for your users.
Right. And if you fall short of that, I think they know that they can always reach out to Mark for help on the way. Yeah. Right. Thanks again, Mark, for the closing thoughts. Thank you, audience, for staying till the last and asking us those wonderful questions. And stay tuned for the next session, which will happen mostly in the last week of April. Until then, take care and goodbye. You have a nice
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Bye.